Hello. Hey, chosen ones, believers. How are you? Welcome to my channel. My name's Nathan, and if you've been watching the videos, maybe you know a little bit more about me. And considering everything that's going on, there are so many people who are trying to predict the rapture date, and all these other things. And no offense to anybody, but the Bible says clearly no one, not even Jesus, will know the time. Only the Father in heaven. So, we are required to go forward step by step, day by day. And His lamp guides us. And if we hold that lamp out in front of us and ask for His guidance, the light only goes so far through the darkness, right? And now the darkness is encroaching on the light. You can feel it. Let's see. Right now, over 50% of vehicle loan applications are being denied by banks. Banks are closing all over the place. The stock market's tanking. And we are students of Christ, not political. A follower of no side, only followers of Christ. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about King David and David and Goliath and all the stories that you may have heard in the Bible. And why do they happen? It's mostly human nature. King David wanted what he wanted and he got it. But he was anointed as a child to be the king. That was supposed to happen. And right now you can see, if you're putting the dots together, here's a simple one. Elon Musk, right? I love this. He has a body armor made up for Halloween. And on the front is the Baphomet, and on the back is an upside-down cross. He shows up at the inauguration and throws a Sieg Heil salute, and nobody says anything. See, that's the really disturbing part. That's how it happened before. Nobody says anything. I'm sorry, why does he get away with that? And why would I follow this person? Why you've blasphemed the Holy Ghost? You're representing the Antichrist, whether it's all fun and games and you think it's a joke or not. I'm sorry, I don't want to be associated with anybody that's wearing an upside down cross. That's just me. Unless you renounce the enemy and all of his evil works, yeah, we're not seeing that. And this guy, Elon Musk, he's got a rocket. Check this out. This is just something that kind of pricked my attention. He's got a rocket called the Crew Dragon. And the Crew Dragon flies up to the space station and picks up the astronauts. And one of them's been there for 9 months. Same amount of time as a pregnancy. And the Crew Dragon comes back to Earth and deposits the astronauts back on the Earth. Right? And then, you see this guy with the president. Standing in the Oval Office, dismantling old traditions. His little boy going, "You're not the president. Shut the F up." No, these are the kind of things you see on TV right in front of our... You're not the real president. Get the F out of here. This kid heard his dad, Elon, talking about this stuff, or something happened, and wow. I mean, if I were Trump or any red-blooded American, I'm sorry, that boy needed to be put over somebody's knee and spanked for disrespect. But that Crew Dragon comes back, and this guy in the office is the Beast. He drives around in a car called the Beast. He drives around in a car called the Beast. And in Revelation it says, "And behold, I saw the dragon cast down," right? And then power was given to the beast. Something to think about. But we don't know. The great mystery shall not be revealed until death. And there's a lot of people that got they know what's going on, and it's just a feeling of foreboding, right? Well, Jesus said, rejoice when you see these things, for your redemption draws near. So, I guess I really didn't want to get into all that, but I mean, we wake up every day and we have to go buy food. I got a hamburger for lunch today, and it was $15. It was a really good hamburger, but wow. 2 pieces of bread and a little piece of meat, tomato, for $15. Well, so if you're a young person, I can imagine you have even less hope. That you're surrounded by a culture that wants to cuss, listen to music that's outside the boundaries of what's acceptable, do drugs, all those things that I pointed out. And so I'm going to let you know about the very first day in county jail and how that went down, right? Like, I caught my girlfriend cheating on me. Caught him red-handed. The guy's in my bed, he's trying to pull down his pants. But it was just a nightmare. And I lost it. I lost it. But the detective, that took me to county jail, he kept asking me. He said, "Where'd all that hair come from?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm pleading the 4th, 5th, and 6th. I didn't hurt anybody. Blah blah blah." Well, I knew I was going to prison. I just knew, and I was guilty. Well, get to county jail, and of course, no bond. So now I'm really having to deal with the consequences of sin and rebellion. And I go, and I'm 27, and I'm not near as bad as I think I am, right? There's some badass people in line in front of me. So they take me up to the felony cells. At that time, it was overcrowded, and there was nothing but mattresses on the floor, and it was a 2-tier cell block. So you had a row of cells on the bottom floor, and then you had another row of cells above, in this concrete pillbox with columns, giant columns holding the floors up of the next cell block. And it's, stairs up on the side to go up to those cells, which were coveted. And the only way to get one was to lay your mat on the floor in line, and as people bonded out or went to prison or whatever and left the county jail, the next man in line on the floor would get a cell. And my buddy and I eventually got cells. But, how do you establish yourself? And do you want to? Because I can tell you, back then, in the 90s, convict code still existed. You didn't just go in there and act any way you wanted to, because there were a lot of old cons that would check you and set your behavior right. Now, I didn't have those problems. I went in there fearfully and respectfully and just kept my eyes wide open and took it all in. And so here's the very first day. We were trying to get our hair cut, and a fight broke out. And I didn't get caught, but me and another guy got into it. And so now I got an enemy in the cell block. But nothing came of the fight. It was no big deal. And a kid comes in. Now upstairs, those are established cells. And there's something called the Okie Doke in prison. And they're all yelling, yo, come up here. We got you. And we told this kid, don't do that. Don't go up there, bro. It's a trick. And it's just lay down here on the floor on the mattresses, and we'll all get a cell eventually. Just chill out. Nope, he fell for it, and he went upstairs. And they took him in. And then we listened to the screaming, for probably pushing an hour. And there were a lot of guys down there in that cell. And I was horrified. I mean, this is my first day. And convict code and prison politics dictate that you do not get involved. And apparently this kid had gone after somebody with a baseball bat, and that's why he was up there in the felony cells. I don't think he ever should have been there. So, the next day, he had put a blanket around himself and was facing the wall, and he wouldn't talk to anybody. And then I walked by again, and I saw blood coming out from under the blanket, and it was dripping down to the lower tiers. We were all working out on the bars of the tier, and he had opened himself up the long way, and we yelled and screamed. We did everything we could, but he was gone. Right, that before the cops could ever get in there and get him out. We had to put a towel up on the window full of blood to get their attention on the cameras. And they basically just didn't come down to the felony cells unless it was dead serious. And, so the alarms went off, and it was horrible. The next one was a big guy. He had money in his canteen, and so he would get his newspapers and his magazines every morning. He lived very well in county jail. And I think I was there 7 months, 8 months waiting for trial and then prison. Well, big dude wouldn't let anybody read his paper. And, once he was finished with it, he'd keep it and he'd stack them in his cell. And one day this little young cat came around, and the guy's sitting out there at the steel tables on a painted concrete floor, sitting there in his boxers and his socks. And the young man comes up and he says, yo, can I read that paper? And he's like, F you. And he's like, what? F me? He says, no, F you. And boom, cracked him in the jaw, just that quick. And the man went over, and his head hit the concrete floor, and he was out like a light, just that quick. And he was a big dude, muscled up brother, and the kid grabbed him by his ankles and pulled him out, started sliding him around on that concrete floor, and every once in a while he'd stop and he'd pepper him out and take all his teeth out. He drug him around and smashed all his teeth out and knocked him out cold and drug him around 4 or 5 times, just bloodied the entire cell block up. And I don't know how it happened, but I wound up getting in another fight. All hell broke loose. The cops came in, and we wound up in isolation and confinement, side by side. And I'll never forget hearing him in there, and he was shadow boxing, and he was going, "You got to be special, bro. You got to be special." I said, "Man, you're special, all right, dude. You're definitely special." I mean, the guy should have creamed him, right? So you see things that are impossible, and don't judge anybody by what you're looking at. Be very, very careful. So I knew then I had to find a way. And my best friend there was a guy named Dave, and he taught me how to make cards to sell. If you're going into prison, you need a hustle, you need a way to make some money. And that was my first thing, learning how to make envelopes. And then we would unstring socks. The jail socks, if you pull one thread, that whole sock is one thread. And then we'd get pencils and twist them and tie them and twist them, and then you have rope. You can make real rope out of it if you spend long enough on it. But we would make crosses and braided necklaces of different colors, black and white and red, and those were hot sellers and great to give away to a friend, to send to his daughter or his wife or something, or his mom. And so I was learning all these hustles, and Dave was my cellmate, and there was a guy in the cell kind of running things, a black gentleman, and he was being really ugly to people. He was running the canteen, and he had set up a bet one day, and it was to climb these columns and they're like 35, 40 feet. Climb the column and, touch the ceiling. And he was taking everybody's canteen. He had all these bags. And that's a lot of cells. I don't remember exactly how many were in there, but he had almost everybody's canteen bag and was out there, counting his licks. And I said, I really don't like that guy, Dave. And I said, I've been watching, and everybody's climbing that concrete column the wrong way. If you reach out, your fingers barely reach the outside corners, and your toes have to be on the face. And I said, I grew up in Key West, bro, and I climb palm trees, bro, coconut trees, and get coconuts for the tourists, man. I know how to climb that column. I know how to win this bet. And he goes, yeah, but you ain't got any collateral. I said, don't worry about that. I said, you got my back, though? In case there's a problem? He says, yeah, I got your back. And, he looked like Tarzan. He had the long hair, big old bodybuilder and brawler. Dave was Irish. He loved to fight. And so I went up to the brother. And I said, I've been reading the paper. And he says, really? Yeah? He says, what'd you learn? I said, well, I found out that you're a dirty cop. And you're here in the Sarasota County Jail for shaking down drug dealers and doing some dirty stuff, man. I know who you are. And he goes, no way. I said, oh, yeah, I got the paper in my cell, bro. Ooh, what do you want? I said, well, I want the cell back. I want you to go back to your cell and shut your loud mouth and stop ripping everybody off. I got a bet for you. But I bet you don't have the balls to take the bet. And he says, oh, yeah? And I said, yeah. I said, I bet you I can climb that column in one try, take one hand off and slap the ceiling, which nobody's done, right? I guarantee I'll do it on the first try. What do I get if I win? I said, well, I just go away and shut my mouth, basically, and you kick my ass, whatever you want, to take my stuff. But there's no way I can cover this bet. But I bet you think I can't do it. I know you can't do it. You can't do it. I said, well, put your money where your mouth is. If I win, I get all the canteen, and you have to give me the keys to the cell block. And then, when we get to Florida State Prison, I want you to check in to protective custody, or I'll tell everybody that you're a snitch cop, junkie. How about that? Oh, that made him mad. That can be found in the philosophy of the samurai. You throw your enemy off balance, make him mad. So he gets mad and bet. That's all right. So I went back to the cell. I took my uniform off and I got my boxers, like I'm gonna go take a shower. But I powdered up all my insides and went to the column and I put my biceps on the inside corners and my thighs on the inside corners, and I inched all the way up to the top like a snail without a hitch, slapped the ceiling, and for good measure I slid down and peeled all the skin off my arms all the way to the bottom. Big chunks of skin and meat and blood. Well, yeah. And I said, okay, I'm the shot caller now. Give me the keys. And he did. He was a man of his word. He checked into protective custody. He got transferred. I never saw him again. But he was a man of his word. And I didn't know this, but by the time I got to Florida State Prison, they knew who I was, and they nicknamed me P. Swayze. That was my nickname. And I had no idea. So I'd already established myself as somebody that would stand up and also kind of, seek the right thing. And, but I'm just telling you, all of that goes sideways when somebody decides to shank you up in the shower or in the mop closet or any blind spot. People, you think of the various ways. Well, I could go in there and just be cool and not be noticed. Well, that'll get you noticed. Going in there with a loud mouth and poking out your chest is going to get you jacked. So you have to find this fine balance and be real, because they can smell it, and they can also smell fear. And so, once again, God was with me, and protecting me and preparing me. And He's preparing you for something more. What's coming down in a very short time is going to astound you. You know, the signs are all around us. So just stay tuned, man, and stay frosty. Continue to pray for you. I'm asking for more and more of you to come around and share and talk in the comments. I'm not monetized. I'm not going to get monetized, because I think when you're talking about Jesus, that's a sin, man. You shouldn't involve money in that. But I'm glad you came around, and thanks for watching. And once again, if you're a young person and you're involved in that life, turn your back on it now, and you'll get a flood. When one step towards Jesus, and He's going to run to you and hug you. You know, like the prodigal son. I mean, run towards you. So don't worry. Stay focused and connected. If you haven't accepted Jesus Christ, now's the time. Now's the time. If you have any questions, let me know, and God bless you. Peace.